The forest clears. A wall of earth rises, stretching past the horizon. Not ruins, living ramparts, freshly cut, glowing red in the sun. Step closer, a moat plunges 10 meters deep, carved by hand. Behind it, a rampart 20 meters high, packed with clay and palm fiber. These weren't random defenses. They were arteries binding city to empire. Archaeologists later measured over 16,000 kilometers of earthworks. That's 4 times longer than the Great Wall of China. Building them required more human effort than the Great Pyramid of Giza, yet you never heard this in school. Because while China's wall became legend, Benin's walls were erased. Inside them lay a city of order, streets paved straight, houses aligned with precision. European visitors gawked, writing, "More beautiful than anything in Europe." They described symmetry, discipline, a metropolis pulsing with design. But that praise did not survive the voyage home. What returned was silence, and later, fire. The secret of Benin's power was not just in its walls, but in the rulers who built them. The walls didn't rise by accident. They were ordered. In the 15th century, Oba Ewari, known as Ewara the Great, came to power. He rebuilt a ruined capital and commanded the digging of moats and ramparts around every village. Ewara's vision was bigger than defense. He reorganized streets, mapped neighborhoods, and standardized markets. He invited master bronze casters to immortalize the court in metal. The walls became the city's skeleton. The bronzes became its memory. Successive Obas, Ozolua, Esigye, or Hogbua expanded the empire, pushing its boundaries to the Niger and the coast. They traded ivory, pepper, and cloth with Portuguese sailors, then restricted foreign access when it threatened sovereignty. The moats were widened, ramparts heightened, gates reinforced. By the 17th century, Benin was an urban marvel, governed by guilds, taxed through markets, guarded by walls. European envoys left in awe, describing a city as wide as Lisbon, as clean as Delft. Yet admiration hid an uneasy truth. These walls also separated Benin from outside greed. In 1897, that separation ended. A British trading mission defied Benin's laws and was attacked on the road to the capital. London's response was swift. Over 1,200 soldiers launched the punitive expedition. They stormed through the moats, burned the palace, looted bronzes and ivory, and sent Oba Ovonramwen into exile. Centuries of engineering and art went up in smoke. Reports back in Europe spoke not of marvels, but of savagery, justifying the destruction. The earthworks were slashed open, many sections filled or left to decay. The Obas had built walls to protect their world. Colonial fire tore them open and rewrote the story. The fires died down, but the earthworks remained, hidden beneath vines and soil. For centuries, the ruins slept. Locals told tales, but scholars looked away. It wasn't until the 20th century that archaeologists began to map the moats and ramparts. What they found stunned them. Some sections dated back to the 7th century. Others were as recent as the 15th. The walls had been built in stages, century after century, tracking the kingdom's growth. Engineers discovered that the moats weren't just defensive. They were irrigation channels, boundaries for farmland, and even highways for trade. Each ditch and wall marked the edge of a community. Families inherited stretches of rampart to maintain. The soil itself told stories. Layers of clay and sand, tamped down with palm fibers, showing advanced knowledge of erosion and stability. Historians began to call it the largest earthwork carried out prior to the mechanical era. But walls weren't the only marvels. In the palaces of Benin, master casters created bronze plaques and sculptures that recorded court life. These bronzes showed kings surrounded by leopards, soldiers, and musicians, proof of a sophisticated, organized society. The artistry was so precise that Europeans couldn't believe Africans had made them. Some early researchers suggested they were from lost civilizations like Atlantis. but metallurgical analysis proved their origin was local. The people of Benin had mastered the lost wax casting technique centuries before. The combination of immense earthworks and refined art challenged everything outsiders assumed about African primitivism. Yet the world kept quiet. Museum labels glossed over the engineering. School books ignored the moats entirely. Today, remnants of the earthworks still snake through forests and farms, but many are swallowed by development or left to crumble. Local preservationists fight to keep them visible, petitioning for UNESCO status, battling bulldozers and ignorance alike. Archaeologists know they have only uncovered a fraction. Satellite surveys reveal more buried lines awaiting excavation. Each uncovered wall is a reminder. Benin didn't just build defenses. It crafted a landscape to nourish, protect, and define its people. But even with evidence in the ground and bronzes on museum shelves, the world has not reckoned with the magnitude of what was lost and what could have been. Imagine if the British punitive expedition never arrived. The moats would have deepened, the ramparts would have grown, forming a living labyrinth that stretched even farther. Benin's guilds would have expanded their reach, exporting bronzes, ivory, and knowledge on their own terms. European traders might have come as guests rather than conquerors, crossing those moats with respect, not rifles. The narrative of civilization would shift. West Africa, not Europe, would be the benchmark for urban planning. Picture modern engineers studying Benin's erosion-proof walls the way we study Roman aqueducts. African students might learn about their own empire's engineering at the same depth Europeans learn about Rome and Greece. Museums worldwide would display Benin bronzes as masterpieces of a thriving empire, not as trophies of conquest. Global history textbooks would cite Benin's earthworks alongside the Great Wall and the pyramids. Kings and presidents would visit Benin City to walk its walls as a rite of passage, photographing the moats in selfies instead of relics behind glass. Perhaps most importantly, the world's image of Africa would be defined by ingenuity and resilience instead of stereotypes. The present, too, would look different. West African architecture might inform modern flood defenses. Urban planners might borrow from Benin's concentric design to build climate-resilient cities. Meanwhile, in our timeline, Benin's walls crumbled, filled in, or sit hidden beneath brush and concrete. British museums still display bronzes taken from the 1897 sack. Descendants of the Obas fight to bring them home. Wealth built on stolen art sits under glass. Poverty lingers where palaces once stood. The walls that once kept out invaders now lie forgotten, bulldozed for roads and farmland. In textbooks, great walls are celebrated. Benin's are hardly a footnote. We inherited a timeline where fire and greed erased African marvels, and that as the gut punch. Our view of history is shaped by what survived, sometimes by accident, often by force. One empire's walls became legend, another's were buried in silence. If kings get carved in stone, let's carve the rest here. Subscribe, so we can dig up more stories the world forgot.